Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today I'm going to talk about set collecting and really around the idea of modern set collecting and whether we can bring back set collecting to the hobby. Now, I'll go right into it. First is, why is it so important? Well, it's very important to the economy of the hobby because right now, most base cards produced today are virtually worthless. So about 99% of all cards are basically worthless. In a lot of cases, they get thrown away or put in a box and never ever seen again. Now, set collecting, is something that is still happening today. And you saw, sets like Topps Heritage, Allen and Ginter, generate some set collecting activities. However, in general, most people don't build sets like they used to. Vintage cards are an exception and people still do that activity, but I'm really talking about ways to make people really want to collect whole sets. So I'm going to go into, rationale and some ideas around how we can get the hobby collecting sets again. Well, one thing is, you need to incentivize collectors, right? In today's hobby, the best way to get someone to do something is to create some incentive, some kind of reward. And I think you would find that that would work very well because it's already worked really well in the past. Now, Panini, Upper Deck, and Topps can use the Upper Deck e-Pack model on physical cards, right? There's nothing that prevents us from taking sort of that model of e-Pack and make it affect physical cards. There just has to be a way to do it. There has to be a physical way to handle these cards that are real, not fake, not just images on a computer, but real physical cards and some way to do something similar to e-Pack. Now, Topps is already doing something right now, right? They're doing the buyback program on Topps Chrome. So Judge, Goldschmidt cards are paying bounties for the cards, right? That's really the model. That's really what you would want to have sort of expanded, because it makes the chase for cards that aren't super duper rare more fun. And you're going to see people feel like, hey, busting a box of cards has some other ulterior motive other than just finding that one chase card that everyone is looking for. If I open 5 boxes, I can build a set, maybe turn that set in and get a reward, right? So that's sort of the idea. They already done this back in 1998 with this guaranteed value from Bowman, where you could turn your set in and get basically a money, $125. I think football was like $65, so they definitely valued baseball much more than football back in 98. But this is already something that's been proven to be an idea that already has some legs. And again, e-Pack is a great example of it in the digital format that turns into physical product. And that's one of the things that makes e-Pack so cool, is that you can actually turn digital into physical, right? So one way to incentivize collectors is to, offer parallel versions of the base set. So on e-Pack, you can take your base cards, turn in 5 or 10 sets of them, and get silver versions of those cards, right? Well, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, they can do this the same way. You could turn in, let's say 5 base top sets and get a, silver foil. Turn in 10 sets, get a gold foil. Turn in 20 sets and get a platinum foil. And I think people would actually do this. You would find that people would probably do this activity because they do it on e-Pack all the time. Now, the fact that you're doing the physical cards does create some sort of need to have some sort of exchange or forum, but we'll get into that in a minute. Offer bonus cards. So maybe those 5 rookie cards that you're looking for that weren't included in the base set might be a bonus card. Maybe you get alternative photos of the key rookies. Maybe you get, something that people will value as part of that set that wasn't included in the base set, but to get your full set, to get the master set, you have to turn in 1, 5, 10 sets of base cards, and then you'll get your bonus cards. And the other one is, tried and true, autograph cards things like that. Now, I'll talk about inserts in a minute. But see, this kind of idea can be applied to any sort of set. So you can do autograph sets, you can do insert sets. And, the thing about it, it would make the chase for those kind of products so much more enjoyable to know if you got something, completed, you could get something more for it. Other than just the cards themselves, you actually get a reward, right? Now, the first thing I would do, if I was going to implement sort of a chase program for complete sets is, make sets harder to get. So right now, complete sets, should be built out of packs, right? And not sold, as complete sets, because to me, they're using the complete sets to run the printing presses and to do variations in a way that's kind of boring, right? You get 5 bonus cards, 10 bonus cards, whatever you get out of your complete sets today. It's pretty boring. It's not a huge incentive to buy them. They clog up the aisles at most years in retail. There might be 1 or 2 years where there's a big rookie that's a chase that people will bust a bunch of the complete sets just to get that 1 or 2 cards. However, if they didn't make the complete sets where you had to get those bonus cards by building your sets out of packs, you would find, I think people would do that. You would actually have people really want to get sets together to get some bonus cards that are virtually, free. Like, you don't have to pay anything other than just collect. Bust the product, get the sets, get the cards, and you'll get some freebies that you got today by just buying the set off the shelf, right? So I would stop selling complete sets. I would make that a big part of the first step, is make certain sets only available out of pack. And if you don't offer the box set, you're going to force people to build sets out of packs, to trade, to interact in the hobby in a way that's meaningful, right? I think the one thing that we as collectors would really enjoy is if we had fewer sets to try to collect, to compete in, to really make this happen. To me, you could do less sets by making people collect the sets that I think are, let's say, more, more friendly to the collector, or just more popular. You won't need those sets that people just don't like, that are there just to pump up more cards, to create that, profit that they need, because they have to turn so many cards over to meet their bottom line. And if you could put something in place to sell more of, the regular cards, something that also doesn't dilute those cards, right? Because the idea is, if you take these, sets off the market, right? You're not printing all the complete sets, the box sets. But also, when you get the cards returned to you, we'll talk about that in a minute, but you can take that out of distribution, right? You can destroy the cards or take them maybe off the market. So again, allows, some sort of like, hobby, equilibrium to take effect. But you wouldn't need to print other sets, because you could actually, maybe survive on the 10 or 15 sets that people find engaging, and not all these, sets that people just don't like, that are only purchased by breakers for the most part. The one thing I'd also do is, make better insert sets, because, and I'd say also, make better base cards. So the one thing that would make people excited is if the cards looked cool, right? And that's something that always has to happen. You cannot do this in a vacuum. You have to make the cards look cool. Base cards should have good design. Insert sets should be better technology. We should up the game there, because, believe me, if I was given the choice to buy, let's say, a really cool insert set for the rookies, and by turning that set in, I could get an autographed version of that set, or I get, the same set, but it's, gold foil, or something like that, right? So I was liking the set anyway, but then I can, do something and get a bonus that makes me want to get even more. So that's something I think really would drive this, home, is if the cards and the sets were better. And again, you can incentivize both complete insert sets and parallel sets, right? So you could, make it so that even if there was an insert set that was a parallel, like, hey, you got the complete black set. Okay, if you get a complete black set, turn it in, and then we'll send it back to you. But if you turn it in, we'll give you, like 5 bonus black cards, or, you get a black autograph of a player or something like that, right? You could do it with not just the base cards, you could do it with the inserts and parallels. So it's something that you can apply across all levels, and you kind of see that a little bit with Upper Deck in the e-pack. So to do this, you're going to have to create some physical card trading forums. You're going to have some places or some way to do this, to track it, to make it happen, right? You can't just do it in some sort of like, program. Like when Topps is doing 2 cards at a time, they can handle it. But when you talk about, something to this size, you're going to have to do something, physical. And I think Fanatics would be the first place I would look to that would make a physical trading forum and make it a major initiative. Say, look, we're going to make it where you can go places or send cards to a certain place to do these exchanges or to do this trading, because I think this would allow for collector to trade. You would have some incentive to have some place to go to do this, right? And it would be a physical place, or it could be online, but the idea is that you're doing this activity, with other collectors. So, create a safe space, online and physical places, places like, that you can go to trade, to turn your sets in, to get credit for what you're doing, right? I think partnering with, Check Out My Cards, COMC, they're already doing it for Upper Deck e-pack. I think they would probably love it if they could, probably expand operations and do this with other companies. This would be great. COMC gets all the incentive cards, and you send to them your whatever cards you have, your base sets, and then they, look at your account, they credit you the base cards, and then they send you the, the rewards, the incentive cards, and that would be something that they already pretty much do for Upper Deck. So it wouldn't be much of a stretch to include other companies in this kind of program. Now, again, you can use an online portal to track your progress, to track, what incentives you have, because maybe you want them stored online. So maybe you get your, your rewards, your incentives, and you just want to keep them online, keep them at COMC and trade them with other collectors or ship to you, but you have some control over how you want things done. And then last is, this is, I think, the idea that I would be very happy with, is if Breakers or your local card store would be a place like a redemption center. So you get into a break, and then you tell the breaker, hey, send all these cards to COMC for me. Don't send them to my address. And they'll put them in my account. They'll credit me as I'm building, whatever sets online that I want to build to get some rewards. Or you go to your LCS on a trade night and say, look, I built 5, base sets. I want to turn them into you. And you'll, be the one that tells COMC or Panini or Topps, I turned in 5 base sets, and, I should get a reward. Those kind of things could happen. You could have something in that partnership program to make this, physical locations work, right? So, obviously there'd have to be some stipulations and try to figure out some way to prevent shenanigans. But hey, this hobby's full of shenanigans, and it happens quite often. So I'm assuming someone would find a way to abuse the system, but we're trying to, look at it in best case possible. But I understand that there would have to be some way to prevent abusing of a system like this. But it would be great for especially young collectors to have a way to turn in their base cards, build towards something really cool and unique that has some real value. And they have the other cards they get, that 1% of cards that they get that are really probably valuable or they're collectible, and they keep those as well. So it's like a way to encourage that they're not just wasting their time with all the base cards. Now, grading companies like PSA should fixate on set collecting. Should be the number one thing they promote. And I know, Nate Turner has talked about this. I know that they're working on bulk programs and set registry, set registry cost, to make it easier for people to submit cards to set registry, to incentivize them to submit. But this is really the future, because if you think about like how often cards are submitted to these grading companies, if base cards never get submitted again because the value is not there anymore, it's limiting their ability to maximize profit and utilization of assets. They should be hyper focused on getting people to submit base cards to them, and the set registry would be the number one way to really drive it, because they have a way to reward collectors that's already existing today. The set registry has an award system, and they can make it more impactful. The award should be worth something. So right now, I looked at the 2022, and it looks like you got some pins. And, like, what in the world of Rudy are we talking about with pins? I don't think most collectors would view, spending $1 million to make the greatest 33 Goudey set and you get a pin as a great trade-off if you were trying to do this just for the reward, right? So right now, the incentive of the award is not great. In fact, I would say that most people today, when I talk to set collectors, they compete, but they're not really competing like they did in the early days because, of the recognition, because the recognition is kind of silly and not as meaningful as it was early on. So I think right now they can make the awards actually much greater. They could, again, we talked about registry grading specials, and I know that's something that PSA is going to be working on. They've talked about it to some extent. But, free grading. Free grading for winners would make this really impactful to get cards graded that they, may not be able to afford. Because let's face it, grading commons isn't really, from an economical perspective right now, is not really worth it. And they could really help with that. Now, partnering with Fanatics, Major League Baseball, NFL, they could do a lot of partnerships, right? And give winners experiences. So they've got King Gold, and there's going to be a point in time where Fanatics will have their own breakers. They've already partnered with all these companies. You can make it where, if someone put together the greatest graded 2023 top set or whatever, and Fanatics says the first person that puts together a PSA 10 set gets this amazing reward or something to that effect. They can make this a lot more fun, right? If you do something, you get a trip to the All-Star game. If you do something, collect something, you get, tickets to the World Series, or, that's sort of the idea behind something more impactful. And this could be sponsored by Fanatics, by other people, not just PSA, but in partnership. I think that's how I would look at partnerships to work is, we're going to incentivize you to collect, and we're going to make it where if you do something in the hobby space that right now isn't really recognized as being great, you're going to get something that's really valuable that people really want to get. And I think you'll see behavior change just by that. Honestly, I think people would value that because people love to collect anyway. Now you're giving them something outside of just the satisfaction of having completed something. And it goes without saying that the other grading companies really need to get on the ball and really need to get going in this direction because they're just not. SGC has been around forever. Beckett's been around forever. And they've never really figured out how to make collectors compete in their own grade. Their own slabs, their own that grading company, BGS, SGC. They've never figured out how to do a registry properly, and it's almost like they punted. They've just said, "Look, PSA's got this covered. We just never gonna compete on this." I think in the future they have to really get in the game on this because they want to survive. They need to have people grading these kind of cards, or else all that volume goes to PSA, and that's just going to slowly over time, especially if PSA gets on the ball, makes their actual registry awards or something, partner with Fanatics and other partners to create real experiences. I think that would just drive so much volume to them that it's really going to hurt their business. So I think it makes sense for them to get on the ball and make this something they could do better, because SGC is known for consumer experience. This seems right up their alley. So I don't know why actually they wouldn't do this. So these are my ideas on how I think we could really get set collecting kicked off. And you're in the comments what you think. And I hope that you take this, with what it was meant to be. Is a lot of these ideas are kind of spitballed, and I've talked about it on a few other lives and videos, but I just want people to think about it. What would you do? Like, what would be your idea to get people to really set collect again? How would you make this fun? Would you offer free binders? Would you offer free, sheets to collectors and do things like that? I mean, what would you do if you could make people collect more sets? So let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.